Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, as well as the latest episode of Cloak and Dagger. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Gotham, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Cloak and Dagger. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Gotham. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, everyone is kind of joining up because obviously the army is aiming for the green zone because that's, you know, the forefront of not just only destroying Gotham, but obviously kind of making a whole point of destroying Gotham, and killing Jim Gordon is what Nissa's up to, because she also wants to do all that, and then she'll proceed to kill Barbara and Bruce. So obviously everyone's making their final stand. I love that even Oswald had to come back, because for him it's like this city's, it's his the rule, and he's not going to let anyone else take it from him. So he's like, you know, because you do have Ed saying like, yeah, you have a tendency to follow your heart, and it hasn't always led you down the right path, which it hasn't. But he tells Ed, it's like, sometimes you need to stop thinking with your head as much and talk and start listening to your heart. And he's like, I'm going to miss you, Ed. And Ed's like, I'm going to miss you too, Oswald. He's like, I'm not talking to you. He's talking to dog. I love it. So Oswald comes back, and it's that thing of bringing back all the emotions, because I've talked about all these other people, like how far they come, and then you look and it's like, here they are. Because even Oswald and, you know, Jim talking, it's like, here they are. It's like, when you forget where they started with Jim, quote unquote, killing him at the pier. It's like, yeah, it's like, if you had not killed, you know, faked my death at the pier and told me to leave Gotham, it's like that, you know, I felt the most lost in, because I was away from this city. This city has his name etched everywhere on any, you know, shady aspect to it, to the warehouses. His blood is in the concrete. Gotham is his legacy, and that's why he's sticking around. Because, you know, because even Jim, it's like, yeah, we've come a long way. Like, their relationship has changed so much. They've gone from friends to enemies to frenemies to friends to enemies, friends. It's been a wild ride, and it's crazy to see them kind of across each other again like that. I even love Ed shows up and it's like, yeah, that concrete thing applies to me too. It's like, yeah, the submarine takes 2 people to pilot, and the dog can't do it. So everyone's locked and loaded. You have Bruce. You know, Alfred, turns out he's okay. He got really banged up, but he's okay. And so Bruce equipped with some tools, and, you know, with Selina's help, obviously they plan on, because obviously they can't hold the army back forever. They don't have the ammunition and stuff like that. I even love during the fight, Oswald is like, oh, your guy, he can't hear you because of the bullet through his ear. And lo and behold, there's a grenade that goes off, and the shrapnel, or the explosion rather, ends up messing up Oswald's eye. So I'm guessing that's going to be the eye he has the monocle over. Which I typically don't think his eye is messed up. He just, obviously, like, the, you know, it represents wealth and stuff like that. But I guess that's going to be something like, maybe he's going to have, like, a monocle that covers that part of his eye or something like that, you know, as it's recovering or something. I don't know. I'm curious to see what they end up doing with that. You know, maybe that's his way of covering up some of the scars from it. But nevertheless. Then you have Bruce and, you know, Selina going to blow up Wayne Enterprise. Interesting enough, the device they're using is one of the bombs, well, one of Jeremiah's batteries that they have to turn back into a bomb again to use. And it's kind of sad, because obviously, you know, Selina ends up bringing this up, but the whole aspect of like that, this is like the last tie to his family in Gotham, because for him, it's like, obviously he just lost Wayne Manor, and she's like, are you sure about doing this? It's like, my family would have sacrificed anything for this city, and how can I not do the same, you know? And he ends up blowing up Wayne Enterprise. It is kind of interesting, the conversation that Lee and Lucius have of like, she's like, I can't believe we're letting this happen, letting them do this. And then Lucius is like, I can't believe a lot of stuff that's been happening lately. And lo and behold, they blow up the building, and lo and behold, they end up fighting Bane too. I'm like, it's Bruce and Selina versus Bane, or should I rather say Batman and Catwoman fighting Bane, which is pretty dope. And it's so interesting. I guess that's also supposed to be kind of a nod towards, obviously, like the whole Bat-Breaker thing of like him doing it to like Batman and stuff like that. Bane typically doing it, but obviously he did it to his butler. It's like, oh, I broke your butler, and now I'm going to, add some pressure and basically kill this girl in front of you. And then lo and behold, Bruce uses a device that attracts bats to Bane, and it's like, how very poetic. So that's how they got away from that situation. But it's still just dope to think. It's like you're seeing Batman and Catwoman fight Bane. And it's like, come on, dude. That's so awesome when you think about that. Then you have the whole Nyssa situation of her wanting to take Barbara's daughter and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to raise her as my own, which is interesting when you think, raise her as an Al Ghul, which I think is interesting because like when you know about the whole like Damian Wayne situation, it's kind of like, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting, especially because Nyssa's trying to kill him and everything, and just when you know that the future that Bruce and Al Ghul's have together in that regard. I mean, they are heavily connected in this, even at this point in history, obviously, but it's kind of interesting, which it kind of begged the question. I'm like, well, Nyssa's the oldest in this. Oh, I mean, I guess Talia either is dead or maybe they're making her the younger sibling in this canon, maybe. I don't know, because I knew Nyssa's typically the youngest and Talia's the oldest, or maybe that's not the case always in the comic books. Either way, that was just kind of an interesting thing, just because like that means that there's still room for Talia to be in Bruce's life within his canon and stuff like that. And nevertheless, you have Jim coming to the rescue, and he's fighting Nyssa. Obviously, she kicks his ass pretty easily because she's fairly skilled. I love that, Jim handcuffs her, and Barbara takes out the other dudes and takes out the knife, and she's like, because obviously you have Nyssa running around, because basically for her it's like, my father, gained his name for destroying empires, and obviously she's going to live out his work. And I love when it came down to it, she's running her mouth about like, the fact is that I share the same blood as my father, I'm his daughter, and Gordon's like, do you ever stop talking? And then it's like, he ends up flinging her into the blade that Barbara stabs her, which is, oh, so poetic. And I love her even being like, there's another thing you and your dad have in common, getting stabbed by this blade. Sadly, Nyssa got away. We even see her get in a submarine, which is like, how did she get away with all? That's definitely interesting. Like, obviously, Nyssa isn't done with. Like, obviously, she not only got away, she actually got away with all the gold and stuff, too, along with Edward. Or I wonder, did Edward just get left behind or something? Because, like, when we see her get to the submarine, she hears her dog barking. And I was like, oh, is Edward going to attack her or something? It's like, maybe she just takes him as her own. Like, maybe that's a little nod to something in the comic books that I'm unaware of. But regardless, Nyssa does get away. And obviously, when it's all said and done, like, Eduardo's still there. He's massing up the army to wipe them all out. Obviously, they're trying to get the civilians out. Lee's supposed to go, but she doesn't. Not listening to Jim, because this is where she's supposed to be right now. And obviously everyone else stands by his side. Lucius, Harper, Harvey, Selena, Bruce, they're all there by his side. But then so does because Barbara comes back, because her and Lee had a moment of them hugging, and Lee was like, what was that for? It's like, everything you've done for me and my daughter. And the fact of the matter is, Barbara realized, obviously, this is her home, and so she and the others come back. Like, obviously, the cops from the GCPD, everyone's there standing as one. We are Gotham. And, Eduardo and them were going to shoot them, but, like, the army turns on them, because it's like, they're not going to kill a whole bunch of innocent people. They see these people standing before them, a lot of them unarmed, even because a lot of them are, like, obviously, like, yeah, we can't be, side with what's going on here, because obviously they know something's not right. They're taking orders. Obviously, like the dude who gave the orders that they were trying to save to undo the orders ended up killing himself as part of her failsafe. So I was wondering how they were going to get out of this, but fortunately, like, now Bane and his men are locked up and stopped. Lo and behold, Nyssa ended up leaving you behind because, you're just one of many tools for her. But I don't know if Eduardo would even care, because for him it's like, oh, he's found his purpose, his new life as Bane, so he might not think much of it. He's probably fine with being a tool. She even brought me out of the darkness, so I kind of have to make my own way type of thing. I don't know. But lo and behold, everything kind of has a happy ending in that regard. Except for Bruce, it's like, obviously for him, it's like, the city was almost destroyed because of him. This all happened because Nyssa came after him and was going to destroy the city to punish him. And for him, it's like Selena is there saying, I'm going to always be there for you whenever you need me. And he says that's the exact same thing his parents said to him. And I think that scared Bruce, because it's kind of like he sees what that meant for his parents, that they ended up dying. And he doesn't want the same thing to happen to Selena. Even to the point, he's leaving Gotham at the end of the episode and kind of leaves a letter for her, because I think that's what it is. Because if he's away from Gotham, Nyssa's still being out there. Either he's going to track her down, which, maybe there's more to that, but I think that might be one thing. But also, it prevents Gotham from being a target, because he is Bruce Wayne. He's such a big face and name in Gotham that he will always draw certain aspects to Gotham, and so he didn't want that, especially when it comes to the people he cares about. Because for him, it's like, he had even said it to Alfred, like, you've protected me all my life, it's my turn to protect you, to protect what's left of the city. And I think by doing what he's doing in the episode, that's what he's doing. You even have him and Jim kind of saying their farewells. It's like, this will always be your home. And Bruce is like, I know I can leave it because I know it's in good hands. And I love that, because once again, that whole look at how, because even Lee's like, look how much Bruce has grown. And it's like, yeah, when you think about where they first met, when he was there that night, Bruce lost his parents, and to see him turn into the young man he is over these years, it's insane to look at it. And it kind of gets you all sentimental about shit, it's just kind of like, dude, just how much everyone's changed and grown. Obviously, we have Jim walking away from this situation, being commissioner, and Harvey's like, the fact is, you're in the water with the sharks now. So, but the fact of the matter is, wherever you need help, he's like, I know where to go. And Harvey's like, so I'm gonna go get a drink before you get all teary-eyed. I'm like, Harvey, you sentimental bastard, you're trying to hide. Don't try and hide your tears. I also love everything with Barbara being like, oh yeah, our daughter's name is Barbara, and you even had Jim being like, oh. And she's like, Lee Gordon. And I'm like, oh, because obviously, it takes a village, right? So for her, I guess it's a situation of like, obviously we're all three in this together, like letting our daughter know that these names represent the people she can trust in this, city. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet. I'm super glad things didn't go the way I did. I'm actually surprised, like, which actually like that more. Cause I was like, oh, Barbara's going to die, and they're going to have to they named the daughter Barbara in remembrance to her. But it's like, no, I guess you can almost be like, that's a little egotistical, but at the same time, it's like, it's just, the funny thing is that she's like, no, I'm gonna name my daughter after me, which isn't that weird of a thing, because people get named. Even my dad's a junior, because my grandfather, his father has the same name. It's not that weird of a thing, but it's just kind of interesting. I just wasn't expecting that to be the reason why she gets called Barbara. But it makes sense in the long haul, because it's like, oh, representing Barbara, Lee, and Jim, the three people that are going to be there, her family. Which is going to be interesting, considering the fact is having a mom like Barbara and everything that means, So I kind of like it better, because I kind of wanted her, because I didn't want it just to be something, she comes from. I want it to be something that was kind of active in her life, and also learning as she gets older, like, oh yeah, who my mom is, her criminal history and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice in that regard. So a lot of other stuff too. Everything with Ed and Penguin. Obviously, it's like, when it's all said and done, we're back to square one. We're just common criminals. And even Penguin being like, the fact of the matter is, the city doesn't even recognize us for being the heroes. We literally stood up and fought for the city, and lo and behold, we'll never get any recognition. Which for Ed, it's like, I don't care. The fact of the matter is, he spent his life just being one of the dregs of this city, just like regular folk. And obviously he was a common criminal at one point in time. It's like, never again. Like, the fact is, who he was before as Ed, it's like, that's not who I am. I will make this city remember my name. It will bow at my feet, and it will not get up until I give it permission to. And so, and obviously embracing himself as the Riddler is like, this is who I am, cementing his identity. No more identity crisis. The fact is, I found who I am and who I'm going to be. I'm going to make this city realize who I am again, so it will never forget. And Penguin's in the same position, because he's even saying, like, because Penguin's like, the fact is, I could have, you know, if they had just let me lead the city the way I wanted to back when he was mayor and everything, it's like we would never even be in this position. But Ed is like, yeah, all that money and power and position you had, it was taken by Jim Gordon, who still looks at you as kind of essentially Fish Mooney's lapdog, you know. So when it's all said and done, Penguin is kind of like, yeah, together we could be so strong. We're gonna make this city kind of recognize us. And I love that they both have knives in their hands, extending a handshake and then hugging each other. It's like about ready to stab each other in the back. I was like, someone's going to interrupt this, but it's like, no, they just hug each other tightly, put their knives away, and it's like, let's get to work about making this city ours. So obviously, it's so crazy to think about that too, where they started off as. Like I said, he was just kind of, you know, one of Fish Mooney's people, and to think he's come to where he is now. Even Ed started where he started, and he's here now. Like, obviously, these being two big time criminals in Gotham, so that's kind of interesting. And obviously, you know, Alfred also saying his farewells to Bruce, because for him it's like, you know, obviously they're going to be rebuilding Wayne Manor, they're going to be rebuilding Wayne Enterprises, and Alfred's like, the fact is, I would never try to replace your parents, but the fact is, you will always be my only son, and I am so proud of you. And Bruce, you know, hugs him and leaves, you know, because it's not just about Selina and Gotham, it's also about Alfred too. It's like his way of protecting them. So we had the episode kind of wrapping up there. I think I brought that up earlier, that I remember seeing something that seemed like it might be kind of a time skip situation. That might be what we're doing. Like, this might be like the next time we see everything, the next episode's probably going to be a time skip forward of everything. Maybe, potentially, maybe not. I have no idea. Once again, next week's episode is the series finale. I'm so interested to see how they finish this up. Obviously, there's one thing I'm going into this episode knowing, which I wish I did not know. It's something that came up that I saw, I wish I hadn't seen, just because I wanted to be surprised when it comes up in the series finale, which I'm curious about that. But I think we are going to get like a time skip situation of like Bruce is going to let things die down, and he's going to come back, you know, as the Bruce Wayne that we know him as, and kind of obviously the beginnings of Batman, I think. I'm curious, like, I guess he's going to do some training while he's away. It's kind of, well, because, like, Bruce is well-versed in, like, martial arts. Obviously, a lot of his fighting skills have come from Alfred, but I'm sure he's going to grow even more in that time frame. You know, I think when we get back, we're going to see, obviously, Gotham kind of, like, everything, a lot of things have shifted, probably. Because I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I think it is going to be, like, a 10-year thing. Maybe not. Like I said, maybe it won't even be a time skip. I'm assuming it will be, but I'm so curious to see how they plan to wrap this series up. I mean, everything's kind of in a nice little bow now, but they're going to add a little pizzazz. They're obviously going to go out on a bang, and I'm so interested to see what that is exactly. We will just have to wait and see what the series finale has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Cloak and Dagger. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down, so let's break it down. First and foremost, Tandy confronts Ty about that whole situation, which obviously she didn't see the whole thing go down with Connors, but I'm actually surprised he apparently had never told her in all that time what went down about, like, what the hell that whole situation is. And obviously it seems like it's triggered by him being afraid, and she wants to rescue Mayhem because it's like, well, we need her because she's the only one that knows where all those girls are. Plus, obviously, like, Ty's still kind of like, yeah, but we saw how she handles things. She went in there guns blazing, could have killed a lot of people. We see how she handles things, but, you know, for Tandy, it's like, we still need to rescue those girls because obviously that's still her top priority. And so for her, it's like, okay, the only way to figure this whole situation out is for me to go inside of that shadow to find Mayhem. And she tries to scare Ty, but Ty isn't scared because he's like, I know who you are. Like, I probably know you better than anyone else. But she's like, yeah, but I know the darkness in you too. The fact is, you hid this from me. You could have pulled Connors out. You hadn't even really tried, had you? Like, he's the one thing standing between your old life and this situation right now. So why? And it turns out, and it's sad because Ty's like, because he's afraid that when the time comes and he confronts Connors again, he won't have the courage to stop him, and that maybe what happened to his family is going to happen. That happened to Billy is going to happen to his mom and dad too, which is interesting. Like Tandy points out, like they're separated. I didn't realize they were separated. Like they were separate, but I thought it was kind of like, oh, like he just happened to be at the store at the time. It's like, no, it seems like they separated. I guess like obviously losing Billy, and on top of that, everything going on with Ty, it just, I guess it took a strain on the relationship, you know. So, but that's what that fear is, what's in Ty, and it activates it. So Tandy goes inside of it. It's kind of interesting. I love that when she gets closer to the gas station, it pops up, oh, Roxxon gas, and she's like, because of course it is. And it turns out she runs into a little Ty, but it's not actually Ty. It's Aloha. It goes by many different names. So I don't know whether it's kind of like a Aloha of like kind of like the in between or whatever, but because it knows who Ty and Tandy are, that they are the divine pair. It's like, oh, you're one of the divine pair. And what's interesting, though, is because it manifests itself, I guess, as the most important people in your life. It took on the form of Ty for her, in particular, little Ty, because I guess little Ty was the one that kind of, you know, it's a representation of who Ty is, but I think also because that's a crucial moment in her life was when her and Ty met all those years ago when they were little. But it seems like he also took on the form of Fuchs for O'Reilly. So maybe it's not just necessarily the most important person to you, but maybe other qualities are there as well. But what's interesting, though, is that basically to play this game, it was interesting because it was like, oh, so you just want to find mayhem so you can find some bad people and save some good people, save some lives. Is that really all there is to it? And she's like, yes, absolutely. Which I'm like, the fact is he asked that means that there's definitely an ulterior motive with this whole mayhem situation. Because I think, you know, Tandy does still believe that even with things going the way it is, that she does believe that mayhem's approach to things is the right way, because it's like you know, she's getting results done no matter how she has to go about it. Even though she turned her down initially, you know, last episode for help and stuff like that, you still kind of go, you still see Tandy kind of chasing after her in that regard of like, I think she feels like mayhem's way might be the only way. But nevertheless, it's interesting because basically to, you know, play the game, she has to pay a price, and that includes her power. If she uses her powers, she has to give up the game. And so she sacrifices her dagger, which she's like, that's all that protects me. And the Loa's kind of like, no, it's not the only thing that protects you. And she gets a coin instead, and the coin is a dual side. It's got the dagger on one side and the cloak on the other, meaning while Tandy's doing this, while her power has been sacrificed, Ty can't use his powers either, which I like that. It kind of shows the duality of their situation, because everyone that comes in there has two sides to them. Tandy's other side is Ty. You know, that's the whole their situation where it's like that specifically because of them being the divine pairing. But I love that I love how that thing works. She looks into that that I forgot what those things are actually called. I don't know what those things are called. Like, I love that it's kind of like she's looking through it and it looks blurry. She's trying to adjust it, and then all of a sudden you see that it's Tandy on the other side. She's turning around looking back, and it's like, oh, that's weird and trippy that it worked like that. But she runs into O'Reilly. O'Reilly can't see her reflection in a mirror because she's not a whole person, so she doesn't have the means to get out of this place by herself. But Tandy, you know, kind of represents a whole person. Obviously, I guess because even though Ty's not there, because they are connected, no matter where she goes, she's always half of a whole, so she doesn't have the same ordeal that O'Reilly does. Well, Mayhem does. And what was interesting, though, is that when she looked in the mirror, she saw like 4 different hers. I guess it's kind of like all the potential, not necessarily, maybe they represent all the 4 sides of her, like her potential, like one of them looked like it might be her as a doctor, another looked like it was her as kind of like, you know, kind of maybe her darker side, and another side being kind of maybe her warrior side, because that side had her dagger. So I guess it represents either the path she could go down in life, or just like the sides of who she is, those 4 particular sides. Maybe it's a combination of the 2, but either way, I wonder what all the paths had led her down there, because it seems like she picked one in particular, and that was the dagger path. So maybe would the other 3 paths have taken her somewhere else, or were they all going to go to the same place? Because obviously they're all her, just different sides of her. And so obviously they stumble across Connor's place, Apparently, he's been living here for months. And what's interesting is obviously he sets up all these cloaks around because obviously he's afraid of Ty. That still haunts his memories and stuff. And Tandy ends up coming across this record room, which is kind of like a record of all the missing people, and which is interesting because that shows you that place isn't necessarily. It seems like it isn't just connected to Ty and Tandy. It seems like it's connected to a lot more. Maybe even because it's interesting because I was under the impression maybe Mayhem is the main antagonist of this season, but maybe she's not. Who's ever behind kidnapping all these girls? Are they just like a straight up bad guy, or it makes you wonder, are they someone with powers or something? I don't know. Because even O'Reilly was like, obviously, well, Mayhem, it's like people have been disappearing for a while. Obviously, like this whole sex trade situation, sadly, isn't something that's just new. It's kind of been in the heart of Louisiana for a while. But now things have kind of escalated, and obviously it seems like there's someone bigger behind this operation. Immediately my mind went to, I'm blanking on his name, but the dude that Tandy met at that meetings, the guy that took over, and he was the one that was talking to her when she found those posters of all those missing women. Part of me wonders, like, you don't think it's him? I don't know. It just seemed like it'd probably be someone that they've come across before that maybe they're not aware of, or maybe it's just going to be an antagonist who just kind of simply hides behind the scenes until we finally meet them face to face. This might actually end up tying into the whole thing with Ty's mom, but I'll get to that in a second about what I mean. Well, let's see. I'll go ahead and bring it up. The fact is, like, obviously Ty's mom, brings up the fact that she has to do stuff if it means getting him back safe and sound. So obviously she's probably, like I brought up before, I figured that's what that whole thing was that she was dealing with, where it seemed like, she wasn't letting an investigation happen because it seemed like someone was telling her to kind of let this situation die out. Because it's like, if you want the situation with your son to get repaired, you have to do stuff for us. So this might end up being connected. The person behind all of this might end up being like someone in a powerful position of power, someone higher up, and official, maybe a council member, a governor, a senator, whatever the case may be, So it might be something like that. So his mom might be unknowingly helping with that situation, just willing to do whatever it takes to save her son in whatever form she can. That's where my mind is, but like I said, with all that, we'll have to wait and see. But also in there are records of Tandy, and Tandy comes across some records that are still closed, and I guess that symbolizes what they represent, because each one of them was memories she had as a little girl, like obviously from a baby. Obviously it's probably something she picked up subconsciously, but there are these memories she has of like her dad being abusive, and they were wrapped up because there were still parts of her that she had kind of not really, there were things that she experienced as a child she didn't really know how to process, so it took probably like now being an adult and looking at it, kind of recognizing what they were. Like you could say like her subconsciously she packed it all away because it's like, no, her dad was her hero, there's no way he'd be a terrible person like that, but now it's her confronting that and realizing like, I kind of blocked this away, so that's why they were all still wrapped. So kind of seeing that it isn't just a one-off thing. Like her dad was very abusive to her mom, kind of the way he talked to her, the fact is he hit her, I'm curious to see what that means going forward for Tandy. That in itself, that experience might shift her paradigm in a certain way that we might not necessarily see the domino effects yet, but we'll probably see them eventually, maybe. What was interesting, though, was that O'Reilly decided, like, I'm going to go back and kill Connors, because for her, it's like, I got to kill him for Fuchs, but it's like, Ty needs Connors to get back to his life, but Mayhem is like, the fact of the matter is, stop giving him an advantage, like, basically saying men already have enough advantage, you're already giving them another leg up, in this whole situation. It's kind of how Mayhem kind of looks at it, which is interesting, just her perspective, because it's kind of like, men with power and stuff like that, they already have enough, don't give them even more. You're willing to kind of like, we should be taking out a terrible person like Connors. Ty can, almost like basically saying Ty can fend for himself or something. Like, obviously she's so caught up in revenge, to be fair, because it's such a personal thing to her, that I think she's looking at like Tandy willing to do something for Ty. It's like, do stuff for yourself. Don't take up arms for him. He's already got enough power that he can defend himself. The fact is, if you're going to do something, do it for you and not for him. Like, killing Connors, it's for Fuchs, but it's more so for her, you know? It's kind of her vendetta. It's like, so it's like, for her, it almost feels like she's saying, like, Tandy's doing Ty's dirty work in a sense by helping out with the Connors thing in a sense. And that's how I'm kind of looking at it, but maybe that's not the case. But all the while this is happening, you know, Ty is meeting up with his mom. She's got those files and stuff everywhere, and Ty's like, what's up with all this? Like, obviously he can't use his powers. Obviously the gang is coming after him because they saw his wanted flyer in the police station, so they have his name, they knew his address. Ty still can't use his powers, so I was wondering what he was going to do about it. I was like, is he going to use his powers in front of his mom? Is he going to make excuses? Not to. It's like, oh, he doesn't have to worry about it. It's cosmically, everything just kind of worked out to the point he can't use his powers in front of his mom, even though he wanted to. So we do see that his mom, there's definitely something there. We learned a little bit about his dad's past, obviously, last season, but now we're kind of hinting towards, like, his mom definitely has a past because she ends up using a screwdriver to kind of start a car they ended up stealing, and Ty's like, how'd you know that? She's like, some stuff from her past she hadn't forgotten. So I'm like, okay, so his mom probably had some, you know, she was a kid at one point in time, so she probably got mixed up in her own crowds back in the day before she kind of put her life on the path that it is now. Which I think that's probably extra reason why she's so scared for Ty. Not just for what happened to Billy, but from who she was. She doesn't want Ty to make the same mistakes that maybe she or maybe even his dad had made back when they were younger. You know, kind of being mixed up, doing their own things, potentially. But nevertheless, she does kind of treat Ty like a child, because obviously that's her baby, so he's always going to be like that. But for her, it's like, I thought you were smarter than this, you should have just left town. But he's like, this is my home and stuff. But obviously, like, Ty can take care of himself, but his mom doesn't realize that, because she's like, the fact is you should be halfway across the world. Obviously, like, New Orleans is his home, so he's not going to leave it, especially he's not going to leave them behind, you know. And, you know, I doubt he could ever leave Tandy behind. They're so connected that they will always need to be together, you know? So that's an aspect to it, too. Which I love that conversation does come up about Tandy. It's like, oh, that's not the other girl, the blonde-haired girl I met last season. It's like, no, that's Tandy. I'm talking about Evita. And he's like, oh, good, because I don't like that girl. She stole my badge. I'm like, maybe you just misplaced it. And she's like, no, something's wrong with that girl. And Ty's like, nah, Tandy's okay. She's just complicated, which that's putting it mildly, but I love that because she totally picked up on that last season. I mean, I just love that she picked that up, and she's just kind of like, nah, I don't like that girl. It's just funny because she plays a big role in Ty's life. But there's the whole, obviously, like, oh, Vita, huh? Kind of told that story. And that's interesting, kind of like the parallels between, like, obviously at the time, you know, O'Reilly Mayhem was talking about the fact is of like, oh yeah, there's this whole, you know, all these girls being taken, and obviously there being more to it and stuff like that, while Ty's telling that story of, like, the vampire notes, which is kind of a sad situation of, like, oh yeah, these women were sent to New Orleans when it was still a shipping trading place, first starting off as a trading port, and they were welcomed, these ladies were sent there to populate it, and they were welcomed by vagrants and thieves, and basically, what was it like, basically they were kind of put in conditions where their skin kind of got messed up and their hair kind of dimmed, like they were kind of malnourished, essentially, kind of like kept from the light and stuff, and carrying the coffins and stuff. It was just kind of an interesting story. I'm butchering it right now, but it was kind of interesting, kind of hearing the parallels. It's just, you know, the parallels between that story and, you know, everything that's going on now. So I thought that was kind of neat. When the time comes, though, they ended up coming across. I didn't realize the dude that was following them was the same dude that Ty saved last episode. And Ty's like, I saved your life, and you're going to do this? He's like, if you're going to point the gun, point it at me. Don't point it at my mom. This is about me. But then his mom was like, point the gun at me because my son hasn't even really lived yet. I want to see him live. The fact is, you know, it's like, here you are. I'm sure, like, who's your mom? I'll probably know her, even if I don't. You're know, obviously, you're the big man and everything. So it's like, here, just, I want to see my son get married, you know, go to prom. Like, I want to see him live his life, so point the gun at me. And Ty ends up taking the gun from him. The guy does have Ty's back when Ty, you know, asks for his help with the whole situation of just telling the other gang members like, hey, like the police are coming, because he called Bridget, who calls other people. I mean, obviously, like, things are kind of messed up with the police and everything, because obviously it's like, oh, they're trying to force the women to turn against the guys in this whole situation. Women that got saved last episode, like, you have O'Reilly being like, why are you doing that? They're more afraid of those guys than they are of you, so they're never going to cooperate. So these people are the victims, but it's like, oh, prostitution is still illegal. It's like, not like they did it willingly. I'm sure they were taken, and so it's a situation. You kind of see things run like that, and also like a whole bunch of cops show up with guns, and Bridget's like, I told you he's unarmed, and it's like, so was Fuchs and stuff like that. And that's just a sad thing of like, because they think he's a cop killer and he's in that situation. So while the cops are closing in, you have Tandy dealing with O'Reilly Mayhem trying to kill Connors, which he even says, I'm sorry, which is like, hey, he's actually apologetic about what he did. I guess all this solitude and that fear was enough to kind of change his tune. But luckily, Tandy saved him, but she ended up breaking the rules, so she ends up getting pushed out. But because she had Connor's badge, he ended up getting pulled out with her. I'm guessing like there's an object specifically tied to everyone. Like obviously there's a price to be paid for everyone to go in there, and I guess his price was his badge is what he had to give up, his dual side. So like the moment she grabbed it, that object was tied to him, so her being pulled out pulled him out too. She came in there for Mayhem and ended up leaving with Connors, so that's definitely going to be interesting. I'm wondering if she's going to push to go back in for Mayhem. Probably at some point. But obviously Connors ends up getting out. He's free. Obviously they're going to have to track him down. Obviously like there's going to be the more passive O'Reilly going after him, as well as Ty, because this is his only way of getting back to the life that he had. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But also, like I said, it didn't really, because I figured this was just like a gang thing of like all the girls being taken and stuff like that. I thought that'd kind of be like a side thing to like the main problem, and that being Mayhem. But it turns out no, there might be another player involved in this situation. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see whether that person has powers or whether they're just someone in a high powerful position. Like I said, it's just interesting that that record store. Was it just because that's something important to Tandy, or is it just because the way Mayhem put it, it was like, oh, what kind of sick bastard kind of basically keeps records of all the people he's taken? So it's probably just kind of like how Tandy can see people's hopes. It's probably like a manifestation, like she did with the Roxanne dude last episode. Like obviously it's like a metaphor and interpretation representing who that person is. So probably showing that whoever is behind all this looks at these women as kind of like a prize that he's like, oh, add to my collection type of thing. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this, if there's any answers towards any of that too. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.